is a condition related to brain development that impacts how a person perceives and socializes with others, causing problems in social interaction and communication. The disorder also includes limited and repetitive patterns of behavior, and it's a disorder that's cutting across every nation, ethnic, racial, and social group. Although autism spectrum disorder is one of the most prevalent neurodevelopmental disorders in high-income regions, there's very little knowledge about the disorder in the low-income regions of the world, such as, of course, Africa. Now, even though Africa has a population of nearly 1 billion, 40% being children younger than 14 years, public awareness has remained at an all-time low, with autistic individuals facing major challenges associated with stigma, adverse discrimination, abuse, severe isolation, and lack of access to support. Joining us now to discuss this very sensitive topic is Dr. Matilda Kerry. She's a medical doctor and also a co-host of the Doctors Nigeria. Good morning, Dr. Matilda. Thank you for joining us. Would like to ask that.
Good morning.
Oh, great. Good morning. Thanks for joining us. Let's get into it. Let's talk about autism and some of the factors that limit it being talked about. There seems to be some sort of stigma that's attached towards autism that strongly inhibits parents from seeking advice or getting help or getting information about the disorder, most especially on the African continent. Let's talk about this.
Yes, I mean, as with every disability, it's there's always stigma attached. So autism is just one of the developmental disabilities that you see in children. And specifically, autism affects socialization, it affects behavior. So the children who have autism display some behavior that may be outside of what is normal and are usually accepted in society. For example, they have a lot of auditory sensitivity. So when they hear loud noises or they receive sensations that are overwhelming for them, they tend to cover their ears, they tend to scream, rock back and forth. So those kind of behaviors are seen as odd by other families. And because people usually are afraid of what they don't understand, there's that misunderstanding about what is causing the child to behave that way. And people would just rather keep their children away and also stay away from families that have children with autism. That's just one aspect of autism that makes it something that is easily stigmatized. So it's not really the society's fault. I think there's just not enough awareness about autism and about what you can do to help families that have children with autism. And that's why we're seeing a lot of stigma attached to it and other disabilities as well.
All right, just for clarity's sake, what are the major signs of autism? And, is this something that can be treated or outgrown?
Yeah, so usually don't like to have a lot of labels attached, but when usually the usual signs you see with a person or child with autism, one is the lack of socialization they have. They don't know how to interact and socialize, so they may avoid eye contact. They may miss a lot of social cues. They don't get things like jokes. They may not greet. They may see you today and interact with you tomorrow, or the minute they're out the door, they've forgotten about you. There's also a lot of sensory processing disorder, where they are usually either hypersensitive or undersensitive to the stimulus in their environment. And we have our 5 senses, so it could be a tactile sensation, it could be hearing, it could be visual, it could be taste. So it's either they are overstimulated or understimulated. So the understimulated children are sensory seeking. Like you would see a child continually putting objects in their mouth. That's an oral undersensitivity that they're trying to continuously stimulate themselves. But a child that's overstimulated orally may then avoid certain kind of food textures. So they have this kind of sensory processing disorders. And then you also have the language delay. A lot of children or people with autism are either non-verbal or minimally verbal. And that also causes a stigma because they're not able to communicate. But when there's intervention early, regardless of what the signs and symptoms that you're seeing, once they receive intervention early, and when we say early, before the age of 5, usually between 2 to 3 years, intervention should have started at a specialist therapist center so that they are able to work on all the 5 domains. We're talking about the fine motor skills, gross motor skills, sensory, behavior, language, to be able to build strength in those areas. So my philosophy and my experience so far is autism, there isn't a cure for autism, but if you start intervention early, you can equip that child to become a person that has the skills that are necessary to function in this world, so that they are able to live independent lives. So you can have a child with autism that had early intervention and then learn how to speak and interact and socialize. But like I said, it's a learned behavior, it's a fine-tuning, it's a constant training of the brain so that they're able to then live in this world, which I always say is not built for them. So they're born into this world, it's not built for them. They can't process, they don't understand and can't pick up the language easily. So they have to be trained. And then also the society has to change in a way that it's universally habitable for not just children and people with autism, but for all people with disabilities.
And now you mentioned some very important points about autism intervention being done between the ages of 2 and 5. Let's talk about accessibility. How readily accessible is, these specialist centers that you speak of, where parents can take their children, and how can parents get support? Seeing as it's a conversation that's hush-hush, not a lot of people talk about it. We're doing more by shining the light via this conversation, but how can parents get support with people just seeing it as a situation of doom and gloom the moment they find out that the children have autism, forgetting that the likes of Albert Einstein, and several other people who have gone on to make history were born with autism?
Yes. I mean, we definitely have to start talking more about it. I'm an autism mom. I'm very proud of my son. He's 7 now, and he's doing excellently well. But if you don't talk about it, then you can't get help. So I tell a lot of mothers, I tell a lot of parents who have children with autism, I have my Instagram page where I speak very openly about it. And you find a lot of people reaching out. In the last month alone, I've had 2 friends reach out to me, and from the symptoms they shared with me, their children may be on the autism spectrum. But like I say, we don't label, you need a diagnosis. And there are places, at least I can speak of Lagos, that you can get a diagnosis. For example, the Children's Developmental Center is a place where they can diagnose not just autism, but early developmental disabilities in children and begin intervention. There are also a lot of literature resources out there that you can reach out to. I've recently written a book just advising parents about life after an autism diagnosis and ways that you can kind of like improve or build a more resilient home so that you start instilling those skills in your children. So there is help out there. It may not be at the level of the developed countries, but I think we have everything at home that we need to be able to instill these skills in our children. These services may be less available in other states, but I know Lagos State is very progressive and is trying to build more inclusive schools and inclusive spaces. So there are even schools in Lagos now that are inclusive in that you can bring your children who have disabilities, and then it's no longer a case whereby they're in a different classroom, but everyone's in the same classroom, and there's resources that can be used for all children. So interventions are available in Nigeria if you do seek them and if you do speak up. It's not a case of hiding your child. It's not, you're not doing your child any good. I tell a lot of parents, and you feel that people will judge, but regardless of your child's ability, people will judge.
Regardless.
So it's best that you get the intervention and the help for your child early so that they can do better and be more independent.
Dr. Matilda Kerry, thank you so much for your time this morning, for sharing your experience with us as well. And we do hope that many parents can reach out to you and get the help that they need, as well as the guidance to enjoy the rest of your day.
Absolutely.
Thank you.